First Peter 3:3, but for context's sake, look at verse 1. He says, likewise, ye wives. So now he's shifted his attention to the women. And we said spiritually you can make application because you're the bride of Christ if you're saved. So to them, he says, now down in verse 2, talking of the world, the outside looking in, while they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear. Okay, so the world is going to be watching, and there's certain things that should stand out to them. Now, verse 3. Who's adorning? So this woman, the way she should be adorned. Who's adorning? Let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting of hair and of wearing of gold or putting on of apparel. Okay, he says what should be noticeable about the woman is not the outfit. It's not the updo or the downdo or whatever the do is up there. It's not the hairstyle, and it's not something to draw attention. The attention that should be drawn is from the inside that comes out, and they can't really put their finger on it. And they're curious, what makes me attracted to that woman? Okay, there's certain things that a Christian should just exhibit. We should have the Spirit of God in his presence of fullness of joy. There should be liberty in his presence. You should feel something special when you're in the presence of Christians that you just don't get from the lost world. And part of that is this adorning. You get dressed for a Christian, you don't get dressed from the outside, you get dressed from the inside, and it shows on the outside. These trib saints, though, doctrinally, they're not going to be able to wear the latest fashions. So it's a good thing this applies. They're not going to have the means to buy and sell like the rest of the world. They're not going to look like the rest of the world by just mere necessity. But he's saying they can have a fashion that the devil's crowd does not have. Look at it in 1 Corinthians 7. 1 Corinthians 7. Now, in our age, we've got the means, we can go get in whatever the latest clothing is, we could go find it. And we've probably got enough money to go buy it, or we could, pawn the kids' shoes or something and go get But for us, here's what he's saying. Don't be focused on what the world's doing. I say it goes beyond clothes. It's language. They've got their own slang. I don't understand it. They say words that used to mean different things when I was growing up, and now they're using it in ways that doesn't make any sense to me. But that's just copying, mimicking the world. Be original. If you want to make something up, make something up. I destroy language on a regular basis, but that's original. I'm not copying somebody to do that. In our verse, 1 Corinthians 7, verse 31, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. The second you think you're getting in step with the latest fashion, it's going to change. They can't make any money off of you if the fashion stayed consistent. They've got to continually change it. You don't have to change. This book has been the same for 7,000, well, not 7,000, but for, was it 5,000 years, almost 6,000 years. And it's not changed. So we don't have to change. Now, that's a good fashion. I get so fed up because I have certain things I like. I grew up with a tie that was a certain width. And I like that because it hung right. The knot would tie correctly. Now they've gone to this skinny little thing, and you can't find them that is 3 inches or more. And that's just that fashion continually changing. And they do it on purpose. They do it with the vehicles. You have the same vehicle, but they'll come out with special colors you can only get certain years. So you can be spotted. Oh, they've got the lady. No, they don't have that was last year's fashion. Right. Philippians 3. For a Christian, we're looking for a fashion that we've not yet put on, but soon we will. Philippians 3, verse 21. who shall change our vile body, that it may be fashioned like unto his glorious body, according to the working whereby he is able even to subdue all things unto himself. So he's saying, with the power he has to rule all nations with a rod of iron, it's that same might and power he's going to use to change our vile body. That's how much exercise and energy it's going to take to get rid of this vile body. That's how vile it is. It's going to take the special work of a military dictator to be able to enforce this body to change. First Peter 1:14. First Peter 1 verse 14. He says, as obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to the former lust in your ignorance. So he says, you're a new creature. You're in Christ Jesus. Everything has changed. Even your fashion should change. The things you like. He says, now be careful, because the flesh will start reverting back, or trying to revert back to the old fashions that it used to know. He says, ignore that or resist that. The fashion that appeals to the flesh is the lust of ignorance. They say ignorance is bliss. Well, if ignorance is bliss, I'm usually in a blizzard. But ignorance is not, it's not something God winks at. God says over and over in the New Testament, you find a command, be not deceived. Well, the deceived person is one who was ignorant of a fact. He said they were fooled. Now, I would have put the emphasis the other way around. I would say, don't be a deceiver. But that's not what God says. God says, I've given you the book of truth. There's no excuse for you to ever be deceived. He's set the bar a little higher than we would. 1 Peter 3, verse 4. 1 Peter 3, 4. He says, but let it, talking about the fashion of the woman here, he says, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which in the sight of God is of great price. A meek and quiet spirit doesn't necessarily mean that you can't speak up. That's not, he's not talking about the volume of your voice. It's a spirit. It's a humility. After telling us don't focus on that outward appearance, he says there is a fashion statement that a woman can be wearing and should be. He calls it the hidden, now he switched genders on you, man of the heart. Not woman of the heart, the man of the heart. He says that's an ornament, that's a decoration that should mark the life of a submissive person, a submissive child of God. And he says it's a hidden thing, a hidden man of the heart. Now, who's the man of the heart? He tells you it's a hidden thing right there in the verse. I like this. It's weird, I know, but that's just me. You see the word ornament. Take the first two letters and drop them off. Take the last two letters and drop them off, and what do you have? Name. What's the name that should be in your heart that shines through? It's Jesus Christ. That should be the ornament we wear. That should embellish every life. The proper dress is not a matter of outward appearance, although some will put the emphasis there. You could wear PCC's standard of dress code and still wear it in such a way that is worldly. The intent you have when you get dressed will show through, regardless of the physical cloth you wear. There's a spirit that should accompany the outfit. The outfit for a Christian should not be to show off the flesh. And the world can show off the flesh even in a modest outfit. It's more than just the actual clothes and how long it is or short it is. It's the spirit behind it. As a matter of fact, the inner condition is important too. 1 Peter 3, 4, he said, but let it be the hidden man of the heart. And then he goes on and he tells you what the hidden man of the heart's going to do. It's going to cause you to be meek and quiet in your spirit. Didn't say in your voice box. In your spirit. He says, and now there's a point of view of this. It may not be meek and quiet around a lost heathen who's proclaiming wickedness. That might not be the time to be meek and quiet. You might have to reprove the works of darkness. But where it's meek and quiet is in the sight of God. So before God, you be meek and quiet and humble. And then in that light, you move forward with his instruction. He says that would be of great price. We don't have much emphasis in the tribulation time period on anything being valuable of this world. Here he's saying great price is not in what you buy. It's not in the fashions you wear. It's in the one you exhibit from the inside out. Look at 1 Timothy 2. 1 Timothy 2, verse 10. This, of course, is church age. He's talking to the women here. He says, but which becometh women professing godliness with good works. So the man that's on the inside should work out this way: godliness and good works. There should be a return to what used to be fairly popular, and that was a movement of holiness. Now the charismatics kind of went crazy with it, but they always do. But there should be a return to holiness, godliness. I mean, that's the basic of what a Christian is. He's trying to be and curtail his life so that it lines up with God. A meek and quiet spirit is what he told us. Look at Psalm 25. Psalm 25, verse 9. This is a good one to work on because it's got some great benefits to it. He says in Psalm 25:9, the meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. Ooh, that's a great benefit to it. He says God's opinion of the whole Old Testament is one man stood out. If you think back through the Old Testament, I don't know that this man would pop out to the forefront of your list or not. But when God chose one person to be the example, the representation of Jesus Christ, he said, I'm going to pick one man. It's Moses. Moses was said to be the meekest man on the earth. So meekness has something special connected to it. Look at Psalm 149. Psalm 149, verse 4. This one they'll be reading in the tribulation and demanding that God fulfill it. He says, Psalm 149, verse 4, for the Lord taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation. Now, the salvation there is not salvation from hell. It's not church age salvation. It'll be the salvation of physical deliverance salvation in the tribulation. And that's what they'll be craving. And he says it's going to be connected to who's meek. That remnant that's left won't be the haughty ones. It won't be the scholarly ones. We got in Isaiah 29. Isaiah 29:19. He says, the meek also shall increase their joy in the Lord. So you ever feel like you've tapped out on the joy of the Lord? Well, then maybe you're too proud. Get humble, meek, and then you'll suddenly see there's more to God that makes you happy than you imagined. When you're focused on self, the happiness is short-lived because we're pretty short in comparison to God. God fills heaven and earth. There's no end to him. Look at the rest of the verse. He says, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. He says it's the meek who are praising God and gets God's attention. Look at it in Isaiah 61, verse 1. Isaiah 61:1. This, of course, is a prophecy of Jesus Christ. It says, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach the good tidings unto the meek. God gives a special revelation to those that are meek. When you go to the Bible, don't go to it haughty, as though you're going to find a verse to support your theory. That's the way a lot of us go to the Bible. And if you're not careful, that's the way you'll do it sometime. And you'll have to slap yourself back into reality. God is in control, and the Bible will dictate to you, not the other way around. He says God's going to teach those that show up meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to open and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. Common denominator of all those things is someone who's humble, the meekness there. Matthew 5, verse 5. Same crowd as Peter is preaching to, the tribulation saints. And Jesus says this, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So the remnant that come through the tribulation will have one quality that stands out among all the rest of them. They'll be meek. James 1, verse 21. James 1, verse 21. As you go to the Bible, as you take instruction from God, you have to take it like a child receiving instruction. I'm not the boss, you are. You do that meekly and humbly. He says, James 1, verse 21. Wherefore, lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. The saving we need on a day-to-day basis is obtained one way, by taking instruction meekly, not dictating to the Bible what you want. Most people think that the Bible is a resource manual, and its best friend, Google, is how you use it. So you run to Google and say, I need some verses on depression. I'm feeling depressed today. Google, give me all the verses on. Google is not a saint. I'm sorry. God will give you the verses you need as you read. You don't dictate to it; He'll dictate to you. He says this woman that has the meek spirit is of great price in the sight of God. Look at Psalm 147, verse 10. Psalm 147, verse 10. The things that God uses and the same things He magnifies are the opposite of what the world does and what the flesh would expect. Psalm 147, verse 10. He delighteth not in the strength of the horse. He taketh not pleasure in the legs of man. The Lord taketh pleasure in them that fear him, in those that hope in his mercy. That, we don't get the full meaning of that unless you put your thinking cap on. Israel didn't have horses. That was something that the foreign nations had. That was the battle tank, was the horse. It could move fast. Over and over, God says, don't look at the horse and be scared. I'm bigger than any horse. And that's what he's saying here. I'm not taking any delight in a horse. Soup it up, get you an Arabian stallion. It doesn't mean anything to me. He says, anybody who's looking to me in fear and hoping in my mercy, that's the man that I'm delighted in. Psalm 149, verse 4. We've seen this before, but look at it again. He says, for the Lord taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation. God's got a different idea of beauty than man does. If you look through the garments that he forced them to wear when they came out of Egypt, it's weird stuff. That's his idea of beauty. The things that they're always offering and burning on the altar, I would think that stunk. All these animals and blood being burned up all the time. He said it was a sweet savor. He's got a different idea of things than man does. He says, if you'll be meek before God, he'll give you beauty and salvation. Luke 16, 15. Luke 16:15. And he said unto them, um, ye are they which justify yourselves before men, but God knoweth your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is abomination in the sight of God. Why is it an abomination in the sight of God? Because they're trying to justify themselves among men, not before God. That's where it matters. They're doing things that are going to pass away. The other man they're trying to justify themselves to may not be here tomorrow. God will. He says, you need to be justified before me. And if you seek to be holy in his sight, then that's worth something. Look at it in 1 Peter 3, 1 Peter 3, verse 5. And I'll do 5 down to 7. 1 Peter 3, 5 to 7. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of info on this because I don't want to get lynched tonight, but for after this manner in old time the holy women also, who trusted in God, adorned themselves, being in subjection to their own husband. Now, he's not saying the outward adorning. He's just explained the adorning is from the inside out. So this is what these Old Testament women did. Even as Sarah obeyed Abraham. This is an adorning, the obedience to Abraham. That's internal. It was not external. It would have said, if we were doing it in modern times, we would say, even as Sarah wore a burqa. No, it had nothing to do with the outward garments. It had to do with an internal thing. Calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. And are not afraid with any amazement. What in the world is that talking about? I think what it's talking about is Sarah obeyed Abraham when he said, tell the king you're my sister. She should have been afraid by that. But she did it the right way. She obeyed her husband because that was the authority God gave her. And she turned that over to him and said, okay, I'm in line with what you gave me, and this is what he told me to do. And so that's the position I'm in, and I'm resting and trusting on you. That's the only way she could have done it without fear. He says, verse 7. Now he switched genders on us. Likewise, ye husbands. Okay, so the same things that have applied so far in the chapter also apply to the men. He says, likewise, meaning the same for you too. Dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Okay. He's saying you can do something that will hinder your prayer before God. That is, if you have a husband or you have a wife, you're a team, and God views you as a team. The example he just gave was Abraham and Sarah. So he's viewing them as a team, and he's saying if your team is falling apart, it hinders your prayers before God. If you're doing something in rebellion against the team moving smoothly, you've just hindered your prayer before God. The whole chapter has been about meekness, and the previous chapter as well. The time the devil's going to work on a woman the most is one time when she's bearing children. I would say there's another time that's pretty close to it that the devil will deal with everybody, not just women, when you're hungry. If your blood sugar gets off, so does your attitude. That's just human nature. Look at 1 Timothy 2. 1 Timothy 2, verse 15. 1 Timothy 2:15, he says, notwithstanding, she, the woman, shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. So he's saying this woman is going to have a difficult time in childbearing, but it's more than the physical that's difficult. There's a spiritual aspect to this too. The woman is the weaker vessel for a reason. Look at it in, let's see, Second Timothy 3, verse 6. The woman is susceptible to demonic influence more so than a man, according to the Bible. Adam was not deceived, Eve was. The time that the devil is going to attack the hardest for a female is in childbearing. Her body is taxed to the extreme. Therefore, her guard is down. He knows when to attack. And that's what the verse was about. Here's how you can avoid this situation. He says in 2 Timothy 3, 6, for of this sort are they which creep into houses. Okay, so a bunch of creeps around. And lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away of divers lusts. So the devil sometimes uses lust when a woman is in childbearing. Now, I don't mean it the way the world means the word lust. I just mean desire for physical things. A new house, a new carpet, a new vacuum. No, they don't want vacuum cleaners. A new, a new whatever it is. The desire for other junk. Now, it's not just women. Guys get it 24/7. He's just saying there's a special time that women have it. Look at it in 1 Timothy 4 or 5, 1 Timothy 5, verse 14. 1 Timothy 5, verse 14. Usually what happens when a woman is in labor is, well, what's been popularized, I wouldn't think of this, but what's been popularized is that a woman in labor curses out the man for giving her a child. That's not biblical. It's not right. However, the world has popularized that thing. Look at our verse. He says, I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. So part of this salvation for the woman in childbearing is this, to watch her language, what comes out of her mouth, because that's a time she'll be tempted to just let fly with whatever comes out of her mouth. There's another thing that does that, alcohol. Alcohol reduces your inhibitions, and what comes in your head flies out your mouth. And he's saying the same could be possible for a woman in childbearing because her restraints are down. She's focused on other things, and that has to be watched. Look at it in 2 Corinthians 11. He says, 2 Corinthians 11, verse 1. Would to God you could bear with me a little in my folly, and indeed bear with me, for I am jealous over you with godly jealousy. For I've espoused you to one husband, that I may present you a chaste virgin to Christ. But I fear lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety. He didn't beguile Adam, he beguiled Eve. So your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. So that's why this focus and this differentiation. Now, here, Paul is talking to all Christians. He says, you're the bride of Christ. There's a female component to you. Now, let's apply it. What he said about the female is this: she's going to have an extra difficult time in life from the devil oppressing her when she's bearing a child. Now, you'll probably all be able to reflect on this and know it. The second God wants to use you, bear a child, to witness, to help someone, that's when the devil attacks. He's trying to change your attitudes and your everything you're wanting to do to get you off track. And the same applies here. Paul was speaking to his church, all of them. He called them all the bride of Christ. And he says, be careful. Remember, the devil deceived Eve in the garden, and I fear he'll walk in here and do the same to you, man or woman. This woman's salvation is from being deceived of the devil, not being saved from hell. That's people will take that and think, Okay, a woman can only be saved if she has a child. Now, he did put some qualifiers on them. He says they have to have faith, charity, holiness, and sobriety. Phew, that's a lot to put on anybody. But he says the woman can handle it. But he just said she was the weaker vessel. He says while she's going through all of this turmoil in her body and all this stress being put on her, make sure that she has these four things. Hmm. The weaker vessel, meaning weaker outside, weaker mentally, because the devil wants to attack, but she can be fortified with a supernatural salvation in that situation by focusing on the things God has said to focus on.